The crowd's roar hit Ethan Caldwell like a wave as he stepped onto the red carpet, his polished loafers sinking into the plush fabric. At 35, the white American actor was the epitome of Hollywood success. Chiseled jaw, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that had graced billboards from Los Angeles to Tokyo. His latest film, a high-octane thriller, had shattered box office records, and tonight's premiere at the Dolby Theater was the glittering pinnacle of his ascent. Flashbulbs popped like gunfire, and voices shouted his name, a cacophony of adoration he'd learned to navigate with practiced ease. "Ethan! Over here!" a photographer yelled, angling for a shot. Ethan turned, flashing his trademark grin, which landed him on People's Sexiest Man Alive list twice. Beside him, his publicist, Sarah Mitchell, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, leaned in, her voice a low hum against the chaos. "Mention the Children's Hospital charity and tease the sci-fi project. The studio wants buzz." Ethan nodded, barely listening. He knew the drill. Say the right words, charm the right people, be the Ethan Caldwell the world expected. Inside, the game continued. He posed with co-stars, shook hands with executives, and delivered sound bites to reporters, each word calculated to fuel his brand. "The film's a wild ride," he told a journalist from Variety, "but the absolute honor is supporting kids in need." The crowd ate it up, their applause a hollow echo in his ears. Ethan slipped away 2 hours later as the after-party pulsed with music and champagne. The laughter, the clinking glasses, and the endless networking were all noise, drowning out something he couldn't name. His black SUV wound through the Malibu hills, the ocean a dark shimmer under the moon. Ethan loosened his tie, the silk slipping through his fingers like a noose unraveling. His mansion came into view, a modernist sprawl of glass and steel, 6 bedrooms, a pool cantilevered over the Pacific, and a home theater he rarely used. It was a dream house, featured in Architectural Digest, but stepping through the front door, Ethan felt the familiar weight of its emptiness. The vast spaces, designed for parties he never hosted, seemed to mock his solitude. "Mr. Caldwell, I didn't expect you back so soon." The voice, warm and slightly surprised, came from the kitchen. Ethan followed it, his polished shoes clicking on the marble floor. Lila Harper, his private chef of 6 months, stood at the counter, her dark skin glowing under the pendant lights. At 32, she carried herself with a quiet confidence, her curly hair swept into a practical bun, her apron dusted with flour. She was wiping down a cutting board, remnants of chopped herbs scattered like confetti. Ethan said the party was a bust, tossing his suit jacket over a bar stool. Same old crowd, everyone fishing for a favor. He leaned against the island, watching her work. Lila's movements were precise, yet effortless, a dance honed by years in top kitchens. She'd come highly recommended by his agent, who'd raved about her étouffée at a Beverly Hills dinner. With a culinary degree from Le Cordon Bleu and stints at Michelin-starred restaurants, she could have run her place. Instead, she'd chosen this, citing the freedom to create without a corporate leash. Lila glanced up, her brown eyes catching his. "Sounds exhausting. I made that gumbo you liked last week. Plenty in the fridge if you're hungry." Her New Orleans accent, soft but distinct, wrapped the words in warmth. Ethan's stomach rumbled, a reminder he'd barely eaten the fussy canapés at the party. He said, "That sounds better than truffle foam on a cracker," loosening his tie further. Lila smirked, pulling a container from the fridge and setting a pot on the stove. As the rich aroma of shrimp and spices filled the air, Ethan felt a knot in his chest unwind. With its gleaming appliances and Lila's steady presence, this kitchen was the closest thing to home he'd felt in years. "How was the premiere?" she asked, stirring the gumbo. "Worth all the hype?" Ethan shrugged, settling onto a stool. Same as always. People are clapping for the explosions, not the story. They're there to be seen, not to see. He paused, surprised by his candor. Lila had a way of coaxing honesty from him, her lack of pretense a stark contrast to the sycophants in his orbit. She set a steaming bowl before him, the roux dark and fragrant. But you love the work? Those moments when it's just you and the character? Her question was genuine, not the scripted flattery he was used to. Sometimes, he admitted, spooning the gumbo. The smoky, soulful flavors hit him like a memory he couldn't place when a scene feels real. When someone in the audience gets it, not just how I look in a suit. He caught her smile, small but real, unlike the polished grins of industry types. This is incredible, he added, meaning it. You're wasted on me, Lila. You should be feeding the world. She laughed, wiping her hands on a towel. Feeding one person who appreciates it is enough for now. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the air thickened, charged with something unspoken. Ethan's phone buzzed, shattering the spell. A text from his mother, Margaret Caldwell. You left the party early. The Wentworths wanted to introduce their daughter, Claire. Call tomorrow. Ethan sighed, setting the phone face down. Family? Lila asked, her tone neutral but perceptive. My mother, he said, pushing the bowl aside. Already planning my following headline. Eligible bachelor weds heiress. Lila raised an eyebrow. No judgment in her gaze, just understanding. The Caldwell dynasty has expectations, huh? You could say that. Ethan's voice carried a bitter edge. The Caldwell's fortune, built on real estate and questionable deals, came with strings. Roles he could play, women he could date, a legacy he was expected to polish. They've got my life mapped out, down to the prenup. Lila leaned against the counter, her expression softening. Must be heavy, carrying all that history. Some of it's not worth carrying, he replied, thinking of the whispers about his grandfather's exploitation of workers, the rumors of racism that clung to the family name. He stopped himself, surprised again by how easily he opened up to her. Lila didn't push, she just nodded. Her silence was an invitation he wasn't ready to accept. You should get some rest, she said, glancing at the clock. I'll finish up here. Ethan stood, reluctant to leave the kitchen's warmth. Thanks, Lila, for the gumbo. And this. He gestured vaguely, meaning the conversation, the ease, the moment of feeling like himself, not the star. Anytime, she said, her smile lingering as he headed upstairs. Ethan stared at the ocean beyond the glass walls in his cavernous bedroom. The premier's applause, the photographer's shouts, the party's chatter faded against the memory of Lila's voice, her laughter, her gumbo warming him from the inside. For the first time in years, he wondered what it might be like to live for himself, not the world's expectations. Downstairs, the kitchen light flicked off, but its glow stayed with him, a quiet promise of something real. The Malibu mansion was quiet, save for the soft clinking of knives against cutting boards in the kitchen. Ethan Caldwell leaned against the marble island, his sleeves rolled up, watching Lila Harper dice onions with a precision that bordered on artistry. It was late, nearly midnight, a week after the premiere that had left him drained. He'd come home early again, dodging another industry mixer where names were traded like currency. Lila, finishing prep for tomorrow's meals, hadn't expected him, but her easy smile when he appeared in the doorway made the house feel less like a museum. Pass me that thyme, Lila said, nodding toward a bundle of herbs. Ethan grabbed it, his fingers brushing hers as he handed it over. The contact sent a jolt through him, subtle but undeniable. She didn't pull away, just kept chopping, her rhythm unbroken. You'll have to do better than that to be my sous chef, she teased, her New Orleans accent curling around the words. I'm a quick study, Ethan shot back, grinning. He mimicked her technique, picking up a spare knife and a bell pepper. His first cut was clumsy, the pepper wobbling under the blade. Lila laughed, a sound as warm as the gumbo she'd served him last week. Oh no, Hollywood, you're not butchering my vegetables. She stepped closer, adjusting his grip on the knife. Her hand lingered on his, guiding the motion. Slow and steady, like this. Ethan followed her lead, the pepper yielding cleanly. Not bad for a guy who plays heroes. Not cooks, he said, catching her eye. Her proximity, close enough to smell the faint jasmine of her perfume, made his pulse quicken. He'd spent years surrounded by polished starlets, but Lila's unfiltered ease was something else entirely. She saw him, not the billboard version of Ethan Caldwell. They worked side by side, the kitchen filling with the scent of herbs and possibility. So, Ethan said, breaking the comfortable silence. How'd you end up here, cooking for a guy who can't even chop a pepper right? He kept his tone light, but the question was genuine. Lila's talent could have landed her a spotlight anywhere. She paused, wiping her hands on her apron. It's a long story, she said, her voice softening. Grew up in New Orleans, in the 9th Ward. My grandma raised me after my folks passed, a car accident when I was 12. She was the one who taught me to cook. Gumbo, jambalaya, beignets so good they'd make you cry. Lila's eyes lit up, then dimmed slightly. She worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat, but always had time to teach me her recipes. That food was love you could taste. Ethan set down his knife, drawn in by her words. Sounds like she was incredible. She was. Lila's smile was bittersweet. She passed when I was 19, right before I started culinary school. I got in on a scholarship, but it wasn't enough. I worked nights as a line cook and mornings at a diner to cover rent and tuition. Every penny I earned went to that degree. She chopped a stalk of celery, her movements deliberate. I wanted to make her proud, you know? To build something real, not just for me, but for her memory. Ethan felt a pang of admiration, mixed with something heavier. His path, private schools, family connections, a breakout role at 22, had been privileged. That's humbling, he said quietly. You built all this yourself. No shortcuts. Lila shrugged, but her eyes held a quiet pride. No shortcuts, but plenty of detours. After school, I worked in top kitchens, New York, Chicago, LA. Learned from the best, but the restaurant world's brutal. Long hours, egos bigger than the plates. I took this job because it allows me to create and dream up dishes for my place one day. She glanced at him, almost shyly. A restaurant that mixes Creole roots with new flavors. Somewhere people feel at home. That's a hell of a dream, Ethan said, meaning it. What's stopping you? Money, mostly, she admitted, tossing the celery into a bowl. And the right spot. A place with soul, not just a lease. I'm saving, though. One day, it'll happen. Her determination was infectious, a spark that made Ethan want to be part of her orbit. He picked up another pepper, trying to match her precision. You'll get there. I'd bet on you. Their eyes met, and the air shifted, charged with a current neither acknowledged. Lila broke the gaze first, focusing on her cutting board, but her smile lingered. Tell me something about you, she said, steering the conversation. Not the movie star stuff. Something real. Ethan hesitated. People rarely asked for the real him. They wanted the myth. Okay, he said, setting down his knife. As a kid, I wanted to be an astronomer. I spent nights on our roof with a cheap telescope, mapping constellations. Thought I'd spend my life studying stars, not becoming one. He laughed. but it was tinged with regret. Life had other plans. Lila tilted her head, studying him. "You still look at the stars?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "Out here, the sky's clear enough to remind me what I'm missing." He didn't mean to sound so raw, but Lila's openness pulled it out of him. She didn't push, just nodded, like she understood the weight of dreams left behind. They kept working, their banter lightening the mood. Lila taught him to mince garlic, laughing when he smashed it too hard. "You're gonna wake the neighbors," she teased. Ethan retaliated by flicking a sprig of parsley at her, earning a mock glare. Their hands brushed again, reaching for the same knife, and this time, neither pulled away. The touch lingered, a silent question hanging between them. Ethan's phone buzzed, breaking the spell. A text from his sister, Victoria. "Mom's planning a dinner with Claire Wentworth. Be there. Sunday." He sighed, pocketing the device. "Family, again?" Lila asked, her tone gentle but perceptive. "Yeah," Ethan said, his jaw tightening. "My sister's got a knack for reminding me who I'm supposed to be." The Caldwell's expectations, marry well, uphold the name, avoid scandal, were a constant pressure, one he rarely voiced. But Lila's presence made it easier to admit, even if just a little. She studied him, her eyes searching. "Sounds like a lot to carry. Ever think about just letting it go?" "All the time," he said, half smiling. "But it's not that simple. My grandfather built an empire, but not all of it was clean. My dad expanded it, and now Victoria runs the show. I'm the artist, but they still expect me to play by their rules." He stopped, surprised by his candor. Lila didn't flinch. She just listened. Silence a safe harbor. "It's late," she said finally, glancing at the clock. "I should finish up." She started packing her tools, but Ethan wasn't ready for the night to end. "Let me help," he offered, rolling up his sleeves further. Lila raised an eyebrow, amused. "A Hollywood star doing dishes? I need to see this." She handed him a sponge, their fingers brushing once more. Ethan felt something shift as they cleaned. A spark, fragile but real, kindling in the kitchen's quiet. For the first time in years, he wasn't Ethan Caldwell, the star. He was just Ethan, chopping vegetables, laughing, and wondering what it might be like to let someone in. Rain battered the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan Caldwell's Malibu mansion, the Pacific Ocean churning under a sky bruised with storm clouds. Inside, the kitchen glowed warmth, the scent of Lila Harper's braised short ribs lingering from dinner prep. Ethan stood at the island, swirling a glass of Pinot Noir, watching Lila pack her knives. It was past 10, and she'd stayed late to perfect a new recipe for his upcoming dinner party. A sudden crack of thunder shook the house, and the lights flickered, casting shadows across her focused expression. "Looks like you're stuck here for a bit," Ethan said, his voice low, almost hopeful. He leaned against the counter, his loosened tie dangling, the top button of his shirt undone. The storm had grounded his plans for another hollow industry event, and he wasn't sorry. Lila's presence was a reprieve. Her laughter earlier, when he'd fumbled a Julian cut, still echoing in his mind. Lila glanced at the windows, rain streaking like tears. "She said this storm's got no manners," her New Orleans drawl softening the words. She zipped her knife roll, then hesitated, meeting his gaze. "If that's okay, I'll wait in the living room. Don't want to drive in this mess." "Stay as long as you need," Ethan replied, gesturing toward the expansive living room. "No sense risking the roads." He grabbed the wine bottle and 2 glasses, leading the way. The room was a study in luxury. Plush white sofas, a sleek fireplace, and a view of the roiling sea. But it felt alive tonight, warmed by their shared presence. They settled on the couch, the storm's rhythm a backdrop to their conversation. Lila tucked her legs under her, accepting a glass of wine. "You sure you don't have somewhere better to be?" she teased, sipping the Pinot. "No red carpets calling your name?" Ethan chuckled, leaning back. "I'd rather be here, dodging lightning with you than dodging small talk with producers." He paused, studying her. The firelight danced in her eyes, highlighting the curve of her cheek. "Besides, you make a better company." Her smile was wry but genuine. "Careful, Hollywood. I might start thinking you mean that." Their banter flowed easily, as it had in the kitchen over the past weeks. They'd fallen into a rhythm, late-night talks, shared jokes, moments that felt stolen from the world outside. Tonight, though, the air was heavier, charged like the storm. Ethan set his glass down, his voice softening. "Have you ever felt like you're playing a part, even when no one's watching?" He hadn't meant to say it, but Lila's openness pulled truths from him, which he usually buried. "Like you're trapped in someone else's script?" Lila nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "Always back when I was climbing the restaurant ladder. Chefs yelling, critics judging, everyone expecting me to be some version of perfect. I got out because I wanted to cook on my terms." She looked at him, her gaze piercing. "What's your script, Ethan? The Caldwell name?" He exhaled, the weight of it pressing down. "Yeah, my family's got it all mapped out. Right roles, parties, and wife. They've been pushing Claire Wentworth lately, some heiress who checks all their boxes." He shook his head, bitterness creeping in. "They don't care what I want. It's all about the legacy." Lila's expression softened, but she didn't look away. "And what do you want?" The question hung between them, seismic but straightforward. Ethan held her gaze, his heart thudding. "Right now, this." He leaned closer, the space between them shrinking. Lila's breath caught, but she didn't move. The storm roared outside, a clap of thunder punctuating the moment. Then, as if drawn by gravity, their lips met. A tentative brush that deepened into something urgent, raw. Her hands found his shoulders, his slid to her waist, and the world outside dissolved. "This is dangerous," Lila whispered against his mouth, her voice trembling, but not pulling away. "You're my boss, Ethan, and your world, it's not mine." "I know," he murmured, his forehead resting against hers. "But I've never felt this real with anyone." His words were a confession, stripping away the polished facade he wore for the cameras. Lila's fingers tightened on his shirt, and they kissed again, the storm's fury mirroring their own. Hours later, in the quiet of Ethan's bedroom, they lay tangled in the sheets, rain still drumming against the windows. Lila's head rested on his chest, her breathing steady, but not yet asleep. Ethan traced lazy circles on her back, marveling at the warmth of her skin and the reality of her beside him. "No regrets?" he asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ask me in the morning," Lila replied, a playful edge cutting through her vulnerability. But her hand stayed on his, a silent answer. They'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross, and the weight of it settled over them like the storm. Dawn broke with a tentative sun, and the rain reduced to a drizzle. Lila slipped out of bed, dressed quickly, and her professional mask slid back into place. "We need to be careful," she said, tying her hair back. "No one can know, Ethan." "Not yet." He nodded, sitting up, his hair tousled. "Our secret. For now." He reached for her hand, pulling her close for one last kiss, soft and lingering. "But I don't want to hide forever." Lila's smile was tinged with worry. We'll figure it out. She grabbed her bag, heading for the door. Before she could leave, the front door slammed open, and Victoria Caldwell's voice cut through the house. "Ethan, you here?" Ethan froze, exchanging a glance with Lila. "Stay here," he whispered, pulling on a shirt and heading downstairs. Victoria stood in the foyer, her tailored coat dripping onto the marble. Her sharp eyes flicked past him to Lila, who'd followed despite his warning, her apron still on. "Early morning, brother." Victoria's tone was icy, her gaze raking over Lila. "Friendly with the staff, aren't you?" Ethan's jaw tightened. "Her name's Lila, and she's more than staff." His voice held a warning, but Victoria's smile was cold, calculated. "Good to know," she said, her eyes lingering on Lila dismissively. "I came to discuss the Wentworth dinner. Mother's expecting you. Alone." The implication was clear. Lila didn't belong. "I'll be there," Ethan said, his tone clipped. "But my choices are mine, Victoria." Lila stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tension. "I was leaving, Ms. Caldwell." "Good morning." She brushed past, her head high, but Ethan saw the flicker of hurt in her eyes as she slipped out the door. Victoria turned to him, her voice low. "Careful, Ethan. The family name's not a toy you can play with." She left without another word, her heels clicking like a countdown. Ethan stood alone, the house silent again. Lila's scent, jasmine and spices, lingered, a reminder of the line they'd crossed. They were playing with fire, and the world outside was waiting to burn them. The Malibu night was soft, the ocean's murmur drifting through the open windows of Ethan Caldwell's mansion. Lila Harper stirred a pot of crawfish bisque in the dimly lit kitchen, her movements steady despite the flutter in her chest. 3 weeks had passed since the stormy night that changed everything, and their secret romance burned brighter with each stolen moment. Ethan leaned against the counter, his eyes tracing her silhouette, a smile tugging at his lips as she hummed a jazz tune. Their evenings had become a ritual, late dinners, quiet conversations, and kisses that felt like defiance against the world outside. Ethan said, sounding like New Orleans in here, stepping closer to steal a taste from the spoon. Lila swatted his hand playfully, but her grin betrayed her. "Patience, Hollywood," she teased. "Good things take time." Their eyes locked, the air between them electric. Ethan's hand grazed her waist, pulling her close for a quick, searing kiss. Lila melted into it, then pulled back, glancing at the doorway. "Careful," she whispered. "We can't let anyone see." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I hate this. Hiding like we're doing something wrong." He brushed a curl from her face, his touch gentle. "You're the best part of my life, Lila." Her heart ached at his words, but doubt lingered. "Your life's got a lot of eyes on it, Ethan. Your family, the media. They'd eat this alive." She turned back to the stove, stirring to hide her unease. Their love was a sanctuary, but the world beyond these walls was a minefield. Their secrecy held for weeks, carved out in stolen glances and late-night embraces. But the outside world crept closer. At a charity luncheon Ethan hosted, a producer named Gerald cornered Lila in the kitchen with all slick charm and bourbon breath. He said, "Your food's got that exotic flair," his smile too wide. "Where'd you learn to cook like that?" The word exotic landed like a jab, reminding her of how she was seen in Ethan's elite circle. She forced a polite smile, muttering about her training, and escaped to the pantry, her hands trembling. Later, Lila confided in her friend Maya, a sous chef with a sharp wit and a protective streak. They met at a dive bar in Santa Monica, the neon glow casting shadows on their table. "It's not just the looks they give me," Lila said, sipping her iced tea. "It's the way they talk, Like I'm some curiosity, not a person. And Ethan's family? They'd lose it if they knew. Maya leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. You're playing with fire, girl. The tabloids love tearing down women like us when we step into their world. Look at what they did to that singer last year. Called her a gold digger for dating a CEO. You sure Ethan's worth the storm? Lila stared into her glass, picturing Ethan's laugh and how he listened when she talked about her dreams. He sees me, Maya. Not the chef, not the help, me. But yeah, I'm scared. His family's got history, ugly stuff, and I'm not sure I fit in their picture. Maya squeezed her hand. You don't have to fit their picture. Just make sure you're protecting your own. Meanwhile, Ethan faced his pressures. At a downtown penthouse, his mother, Margaret Caldwell, hosted a dinner to introduce him to Claire Wentworth, the heiress she'd been championing. The dining room glittered with crystal and old money, but Ethan's mind was on Lila, who'd prepped the meal earlier. As Claire chatted about her philanthropy, Margaret's gaze bore into him, her message clear. This was the match she approved. After dessert, Margaret pulled Ethan aside, her voice low. Claire's perfect for you, Ethan. She understands our world, our responsibilities. The Caldwells have a legacy to uphold, and you know what's at stake. Her words carried the weight of generations, tainted by whispers of her father's ruthless real estate deals, some built on displacing vulnerable communities. I'm not a chess piece, Mother, Ethan said, his tone sharp. I'll choose my own life. Margaret's lips thinned. Don't be naive. The wrong choice could unravel everything we've built. That night, Ethan returned home to find Lila in the kitchen, plating a late supper of shrimp étouffée. The sight of her apron tied, curls escaping her bun, eased the tension in his chest. He crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms. I missed you, he murmured, kissing her deeply. Lila laughed against his lips. I was here this morning. But she clung to him, sensing his unease. Rough night? He sighed, resting his forehead against hers. My mother's pushing Claire Wentworth again. It's like I'm a prop in their game. He hesitated, then added that I overheard her talking to a friend about keeping the family image pure at the dinner. It's code for their old prejudices. I'm so sorry, Lila. Her stomach twisted, but she squared her shoulders. I'm not surprised. I heard her earlier, when I was setting up. She didn't know I was in the pantry. Said I was talented, but not our kind. Lila's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed the sting. Ethan's face darkened. She has no right. You're more real than anyone in that room. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. I'll protect you from them, Lila. I promise. She wanted to believe him, but Maya's warning echoed. It's not just your family, Ethan. It's the whole world out there. The cameras, the headlines. We're not just us in here. Then let's stay here, he said, half serious, pulling her closer. They sank onto the kitchen stools, sharing the étouffée, their laughter a quiet rebellion. Ethan's hand rested on hers as they ate, a silent vow to shield their love, even as the shadows of his family's expectations loomed. Lila Harper sat on the edge of her bathtub, the small apartment bathroom feeling smaller as she stared at the plastic stick in her hand. 2 pink lines glared back, unmistakable. Her heart pounded, a mix of shock and something softer. Hope, maybe, stirring deep within. She took a deep breath, the air sharp with the scent of her jasmine candle, and reached for another test from the pharmacy bag. 3 tests later, all showing the same result. There was no denying it. She was pregnant with Ethan Caldwell's child. Twins. The second test suggested a detail that made her hands tremble. The hum of Los Angeles traffic filtered through her window, a reminder of the world beyond her quiet sanctuary. Ethan was halfway across the Atlantic, charming reporters on a European press tour for his latest film. Their secret romance, burning bright for 3 months, now felt like a fragile thread stretched across continents. Lila placed a hand on her still flat stomach, imagining the lives, growing inside her. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "You're stronger than you know, Cher." But this was a storm she hadn't prepared for. She brewed chamomile tea, the ritual grounding her as she paced her tiny living room. Should she tell Ethan? Of course, she should. But how? A phone call felt too cold, too distant for news this big. Waiting 2 weeks for his return seemed unbearable, a weight pressing harder each day. She pictured his smile, the way he'd held her in the kitchen last week, promising to shield her from his family's judgment. But the Caldwells, Margaret, Victoria, their polished empire, would never accept her, especially not now. A baby, twins, would be a scandal they'd fight to bury. Her phone buzzed, Ethan's name lighting up the screen. Lila's throat tightened, but she answered, forcing a steady tone. "Hey, you. Hey, beautiful." Ethan's voice came through, warm despite the static of the transatlantic call. "I miss you. Paris is all lights and noise, but it's not the same without you." "I miss you too," she said, gripping the phone. Her voice wavered, and she cursed the hormones already playing havoc. "How's the tour?" "Exhausting. Same questions, different accents." He paused, his tone sharpening. "You okay?" "You sound off." "Just tired," she lied, biting her lip. "Long day in the kitchen." She wanted to blurt it out, to tell him everything, but the words stuck. Not like this, she thought. Not over the phone. "Get some rest," he said, concern lacing his words. "I'll be back in 10 days. We'll take that trip I promised, just us." Lila managed a smile he couldn't see. "Sounds perfect." They hung up, and she curled up on her couch, hugging a pillow. The tests lay on the coffee table, a silent challenge. She had time to figure this out, but time felt like an enemy. Lila arrived at Ethan's mansion the next morning, where her routine was a lifeline. She prepped his meals for the week, chopping vegetables with mechanical precision. The housekeeper, Rosa, greeted her with a warm smile, her gray hair pulled into a neat bun. "Mr. Caldwell called," Rosa said, handing Lila a list of freezer-friendly dishes he'd requested. "He's counting on your magic when he's back." Lila nodded, grateful for the distraction. But as she diced carrots, a wave of nausea hit, sudden and fierce. She dropped the knife, rushing to the bathroom just in time. When she emerged, pale and shaky, Rosa was waiting with a glass of water, her eyes kind but knowing. "Are you sick, mija?" Rosa asked, her voice soft. "Or is it something else?" Lila froze, the glass cold against her fingers. "Something I ate," she mumbled, avoiding Rosa's gaze. Rosa's expression softened, maternal. "I raised 4 kids. I know morning sickness when I see it." She guided Lila to a chair, her touch gentle but firm. "How far along?" Lila's eyes stung, the truth spilling out. "I found out yesterday. 6 weeks. Twins." Saying it aloud made it real, and tears slipped down her cheeks. Rosa patted her hand. "And Mr. Caldwell doesn't know?" Lila shook her head, and Rosa sighed. "I was 19 when I had my first. Alone. The father was a dreamer, like your Ethan, but he wasn't ready. You need to tell him, Lila. Secrets like this don't last." "I will," Lila whispered when he's back. I don't know how he'll react." Rosa squeezed her hand. "He's a good man. He'll surprise you." The day turned darker when the front door opened, and Margaret Caldwell's heels clicked into the kitchen. Lila's heart sank. Margaret, elegant in a cream suit, her silver blonde hair impeccable, surveyed the room with a critical eye. "You're the chef," she said, her tone cool, not a question. "Lila, is it?" "Yes, ma'am," Lila replied, wiping her hands on her apron, her nausea forgotten under Margaret's scrutiny. "Lila Harper." Margaret's lips curved, not quite a smile. "My son speaks highly of your cooking. That jambalaya," he says, "is exceptional." She wandered the kitchen, inspecting a pot as if it held secrets. "I'm checking on the house while Ethan's away. He returns next week, correct?" "Wednesday," Lila said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. This was her first encounter with Margaret. Every word felt like a test. Margaret nodded, her gaze lingering. "There's a gala next Friday, the Caldwell Foundation's annual event. Ethan will attend, of course, with Claire Wentworth." The name landed like a stone, heavy with intent. The Wentworths and Caldwells have history, a suitable match. Lila's hands trembled, but she kept her eyes on her work, chopping herbs with forced calm. "I'm sure Mr. Caldwell knows what's best for him," she said, meeting Margaret's gaze briefly. Margaret stepped closer, her voice low. "You seem sensible, Miss Harper. People in Ethan's position have obligations, choices that affect more than just themselves. I trust you understand." The message was clear. Stay in your lane. Lila swallowed hard, her pride warring with fear. "I'm his chef, Mrs. Caldwell." "Good," Margaret said, her smile cold. "Then we're clear." She left without another word, her perfume lingering like a warning. Lila sank onto a stool, one hand on her stomach. Margaret's words echoed Maya's warning. Ethan's world wasn't hers. A baby or twins would shatter that world further. She imagined telling him and pictured his shock and his family's fury. But she also saw his eyes, soft and earnest, promising to protect her. Could he? Would he? That night, Ethan called, his voice a balm. "One more week," he said, excited. "Then we're getting away. Just us." Lila's resolve wavered. "Ethan, there's something I need to tell you." Her voice shook, the words on the tip of her tongue. "Hold that thought," he interrupted, apologetic. "My agents are on the other line. Script stuff. I'll call back in 15, okay?" But he didn't call back that night. Lila lay awake, the tests hidden in her drawer. Her grandmother's strength, her only anchor. When Ethan returned, she'd tell him. Until then, she'd carry this alone, a secret as fragile as the lives within her. The morning sun spilled across Ethan Caldwell's Malibu kitchen, where Lila Harper plated a breakfast of shrimp and grits, the dish a quiet nod to their shared moments. Back from his European press tour, Ethan stood behind her, his arms circling her waist, his lips brushing her neck. "God, I missed this," he murmured, his voice warm with relief. Lila leaned into him, savoring the moment, but her heart was heavy. She hadn't told him about the twins, the secret weighing like a stone. Last night's reunion, all kisses and whispered promises, had pushed the confession aside. But today, she resolved, she'd tell him. Before she could speak, Ethan's phone buzzed on the counter, a news alert flashing. He frowned, swiping it open, and froze. "Lila," he said, his voice tight, turning the screen toward her. A grainy photo filled the display. Ethan kissing her goodbye at her apartment door, taken weeks before his trip. The headline screamed, "Hollywood heartthrob, Ethan Caldwell, in secret fling with chef." The article, from a tabloid known for its venom, called Lila his cook and hinted at a workplace scandal, with anonymous sources claiming she'd seduced him for fame. Lila's stomach churned, her hand instinctively covering her stomach. "How did they get this?" she whispered, scanning the article. The words stung. Opportunist, social climber, each laced with a subtext she'd feared. The comments online were worse, some openly vicious, questioning her motives, her place in Ethan's world. "Someone's been watching us," Ethan said grimly, tossing the phone down. "Probably hired by my family or the studio. They're obsessed with my image." He pulled her close, his jaw set. "I'm so sorry, Lila. This is my fault." She shook her head, stepping back. "It's not just you. I knew what I was risking." Her voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "They're already painting me as the villain. And your family. They'll hate this." Ethan's phone rang as if on cue. His sister, Victoria. He declined the call, but a text followed. "Emergency family meeting. Noon. Be there." Ethan's eyes darkened. "They're circling the wagons. I need to handle this." Lila nodded, her throat tight. "Go. I'll finish here and head home." She paused, the words "I'm pregnant" on her lips, but the chaos swallowed them. This wasn't the moment. The Caldwell estate, a fortress of marble and manicured lawns, loomed as Ethan pulled into the driveway. Inside, the grand living room was a stage for confrontation. Margaret Caldwell sat on an antique sofa, her posture regal, while Victoria paced by the fireplace, her tailored blazer as sharp as her glare. "Have you seen the headlines?" Victoria snapped as Ethan entered. "The board's livid. Sponsors are calling. This is a disaster." "Hello to you too," Ethan said coldly, dropping into a chair. "Say what you mean, Victoria." Margaret's voice cut through, icy and controlled. "You've been careless, Ethan. A fling with the help is one thing, but letting it leak to the press? Unacceptable." "She's not the help," Ethan shot back, his voice low with fury. "Her name's Lila Harper, and I love her." The room fell silent, the weight of his words a grenade. Victoria recovered first, her laugh sharp. "Love? Please. She's a distraction, Ethan, and a liability. The media is calling her a gold digger." "Is that good for the Caldwell name?" Ethan's fists clenched. "The Caldwell name's built on lies. Grandfather's shady deals, Dad's payoffs. Please don't lecture me about reputation." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "You're being dramatic. This is about protecting our legacy. We've arranged a statement with Sarah. Call it a brief fling, now over. Claire Wentworth has agreed to pose as your reconciled girlfriend. It's clean and straightforward." Ethan stood, his voice deadly calm. "You don't get to decide my life. I'm with Lila, and I'm not hiding it." Victoria stepped closer, her tone venomous. "You're throwing away everything for her. She's not one of us, Ethan. You think she's after love? Or your money?" He moved so fast that Victoria flinched, his face inches from hers. "Say one more word about Lila, and you'll regret it." His voice was a growl, his restraint fraying. "Enough." Margaret rose, her composure strained. "Think about the consequences, Ethan. The studio's already wavering on your next film, a family-friendly project. They don't want a scandal. Then they can find another star." Ethan snapped. "I'm done playing your game." He stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Back at his mansion, Lila was gone, her dishes cleaned, and there was a note on the counter. She had to run. "Call me." Ethan dialed her, his heart racing. "Lila, I face them. They want me to deny us, but I won't. Where are you?" "At my place," she said, her voice shaky. "Ethan, it isn't good out there. Photographers followed me home. They're shouting things. Awful things." Her pause was heavy. I need to tell you something, but not like this. Come over? I'm on my way, he said, grabbing his keys. He found her curled on the couch at Lila's apartment, her eyes red. Paparazzi lingered outside, their flashes piercing the curtains. Ethan pulled her into his arms, the world's noise fading. We'll get through this, he promised. Lila took a deep breath, her hand on her stomach. Ethan, I'm pregnant. Twins. 7 weeks. The words hung between them, a seismic shift. Ethan's eyes widened, shock giving way to wonder. Twins? He knelt before her, taking her hands. Lila, I'm here. Whatever comes, we face it together. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Your family, they'll never accept this. And the media, let them burn, he said fiercely. You and our babies are my future. He kissed her, sealing the vow, but both knew the storm was beginning. The Oregon coast stretched before the small, cedar-shingled house, its gray waves crashing under a sky heavy with clouds. Lila Harper stood on the deck, a wool blanket draped over her shoulders, the salt air cool against her skin. Ethan Caldwell had whisked her here 3 days ago, a secret haven he'd bought under a pseudonym to escape the world's prying eyes. The media storm, sparked by a leaked photo of their kiss, had turned her life into a circus, with paparazzi camped outside her Los Angeles apartment, hurling questions that cut deeper than she'd admit. Here, though, the world felt distant, the only sounds the ocean and the gulls overhead. Ethan stepped outside, 2 mugs of coffee in hand, his flannel shirt rumpled from sleep. Morning, he said, handing her a mug, his fingers brushing hers. His eyes, usually sharp with the weight of his public life, were soft, unguarded. Sleep okay? Better than in weeks, Lila said, sipping the coffee. Her hand rested on her stomach, the twins quiet, not yet visible, but ever present in her thoughts. This place, it's like a dream. The house, tucked among pines with a private beach, was a world away from Malibu's glass mansions and flashing cameras. Ethan leaned against the railing, gazing at the horizon. I bought it years ago, a bolt hole for when Hollywood gets too loud. Never thought I'd need it like this. He turned to her, his smile warm but tinged with worry. You're safe here, Lila. No one knows where we are. She nodded, but Maya's warning echoed in her mind. The tabloids love tearing down women like us. The headlines still stung, calling her a gold digger, questioning her motives. Safe for now, she said softly. But we can't hide forever, Ethan. Not with... She gestured to her belly, the twins a secret only Rosa, the housekeeper, shared. We'll figure it out, he said, pulling her close. You, me, and them. His hand rested gently on her stomach, and Lila felt a flutter. Not just the twins, but something more profound, a fragile hope. Their days fell into a gentle rhythm. Mornings were spent walking the beach, collecting smooth stones, their laughter mingling with the waves. Lila found solace in the kitchen, experimenting with recipes. Dungeness crab gumbo, blackberry cornbread, her pregnancy cravings sparking bold flavors. Free from scripts and schedules, Ethan started writing a story about a man breaking free from a tainted legacy. They'd sit by the fire at night, reading aloud, their voices weaving dreams of a life unburdened by the Caldwell name. Lila met Janelle, a local restaurateur, one afternoon at a nearby market. Janelle, warm and no-nonsense, ran a cozy bistro in town, her menu blending Pacific Northwest ingredients with soulful twists. Over coffee, Lila shared her vision for a restaurant rooted in her grandmother's Creole recipes, reimagined with modern flair. Janelle said, You need a space with heart, scribbling a contact for a Portland realtor, and a business plan that scares you a little. That's how you know it's real. Lila left inspired, sketching menu ideas on napkins, her dream feeling closer than ever. But the outside world wouldn't stay away. Ethan's phone, which was kept off most days, buzzed with a voicemail from Victoria. He played it on speaker, her voice cold and precise. "The board's meeting tomorrow. Your absence is noted, Ethan. We're restructuring the trust. You're risking your stake in the company. Call me." The message ended, leaving a chill in the air. Ethan's jaw tightened, his fingers gripping the phone. "She's trying to cut me off," he said, pacing the living room. "Half that company's mine by birthright, but Victoria's playing hardball." Lila's heart sank. "Because of me? Us?" She sat on the couch, her hands clasped tightly. "No," Ethan said fiercely, kneeling before her. "Because of their greed, their need to control everything. They think they can scare me into line." He took her hands, his eyes blazing. "I need to go back to LA for just a few days, to fight this." Lila shook her head, fear creeping in. "The media's still out there, Ethan. They're camped at your house. I saw the alerts. More articles, uglier ones." That morning, she'd glimpsed a headline. "Caldwell's chef, love or ambition." The words had twisted like a knife. "You're safer here," Ethan said, his voice firm. "I won't let them near you, not in your condition." He touched her stomach, his expression softening. "Stay with Janelle if you need company. I'll handle Victoria." Lila wanted to argue, to stand by him, but the exhaustion of pregnancy and the media's venom held her back. "Promise you'll come back soon," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Always," he promised, kissing her forehead. He called Rosa, asking her to check on Lila, then packed a small bag. As he drove to the airfield, the ocean fading in his rear view, Ethan felt the weight of what he was leaving and what he was fighting for. Lila, the twins, and their future. Victoria's move was a betrayal, but he'd face it head-on for them. Back at the beach house, Lila stood on the deck, watching the waves. Janelle's words echoed. A plan that scares you. Her restaurant dream, the twins, Ethan's battle. It all scared her. But as she felt a faint kick, the first she'd noticed, she smiled. "We're stronger than we know," she whispered, channeling her grandmother. The storm was coming, but this sanctuary held her steady for now. Ethan Caldwell sat in the makeup chair at the GMA studios in Los Angeles. The buzz of the set a stark contrast to the quiet Oregon beach house he'd left behind. His jaw was set, his eyes fixed on the mirror as a stylist dusted powder across his face. Today's interview was his chance to reclaim his narrative, to tell the world about his love for Lila Harper and the Caldwell family's shadowed legacy. The tabloids had been relentless since the leaked photo of their kiss, painting Lila as an opportunist, their words dripping with coded venom. Ethan's sister Victoria had escalated the war, spreading lies about a romance with Claire Wentworth and threatening his share of the family trust. This was his counter-strike. Sarah, his publicist, hovered nearby, her tablet glowing with talking points. "Keep it light, Ethan," she urged, her voice tight. "Focus on your relationship and the babies. Don't burn bridges with your family on live TV. The studio's already nervous about your next film." Her eyes flicked to his, pleading for restraint. "I'm done with half-truths," Ethan said, his tone final. "The public needs to know who the Caldwells are." Sarah sighed, but didn't argue further, sensing his resolve. Back in Oregon, Lila sat on the beach house couch, a mug of chamomile tea cooling in her hands. The TV was tuned to GMA. Ethan's interview was minutes away. Her stomach churned, not just from the twins now 8 weeks along, but from fear. She'd seen the latest headlines. Caldwell's chef. A calculated affair? The comments online were worse, some viciously personal, questioning her worth, her place. Janelle, her new friend and local restaurateur, had texted support. "You're stronger than their noise." But the noise was loud, and Lila felt its weight. The interview began with softball questions. The host, a polished woman with a practiced smile, leaned forward. "Ethan, tell us about Lila Harper. How did you two meet?" Ethan's face softened, his voice warm. "She's my private chef, but she's so much more. Lila's brilliant and talented, with a heart bigger than any kitchen. We met over her incredible gumbo, and I fell for her honesty, her strength." He paused, his eyes steady. "She's the realest person I know." Lila's throat tightened, tears pricking her eyes. His words were a lifeline, pulling her above the media's vitriol. The host shifted gears. "Your relationships caused quite a stir. There are rumors about twins. Can you confirm?" Ethan smiled, a mix of pride and defiance. "Yes, we're expecting twins. It's the best surprise of my life." The audience cooed, but the host's next question was pointed. "Your family's famously private. How have they reacted to this unconventional relationship?" This was it. Ethan took a deep breath, his voice steady but charged. "The Caldwells have always controlled the narrative, protecting our name at any cost, even when it meant silencing people, hiding truths. My grandfather built his fortune exploiting communities, displacing families for profit. My father continued those practices, more discreetly. My mother and sister maintain this perfect image, but it's a lie." He leaned forward, eyes blazing. "They've tried to end my relationship with Lila from the start, not just because they can't control it, but because of their prejudice." The host blinked, startled by his candor. "Those are serious accusations, Ethan. You're saying your family disapproves of Lila because of what?" Ethan's voice didn't waver, "Because she doesn't fit their mold. Because she's not the heiress they chose, like Claire Wentworth. Because they can't stand it. I love someone who challenges their world." He paused, softer now. "Lila's everything they're not. Authentic, fearless. And they're trying to punish me for choosing her, cutting me off from the family trust." The studio was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Watching from Oregon, Lila felt her heart pound, pride mixing with dread. He was risking everything, his career, his family, for her, for their twins. Social media exploded, split between support and venom. Fans praised his honesty, tweeting #Team Ethan Lila, while others slung insults, calling Lila a trap, a scandal. Advocacy groups amplified his words, hailing his courage in exposing his family's past. Then, chaos. Ethan's phone, left in the green room, buzzed incessantly. Sarah rushed to the set's edge, her face pale, gesturing frantically. Ethan paused mid-sentence, the host looking confused. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice tight. "Is something wrong?" Sarah was allowed onto the set, whispering urgently. "It's Lila. She's in the hospital. They think it's preeclampsia." Ethan's world tilted. He stood abruptly, the microphone clipped to his jacket forgotten. "I have to go," he told the host, who was already moving. Family emergency. The program cut to commercial, and the set blurred as Ethan tore off the mic and dialed Lila's number. No answer. Panic clawed at his chest. "What happened?" he demanded, grabbing his phone from Sarah. She relayed what Rosa, the housekeeper, had told her. Lila had felt dizzy after watching the interview, then collapsed with sharp pains. Janelle had driven her to the coastal hospital, where doctors monitored her and the twins. Ethan was on a private plane within the hour, Los Angeles fading behind him. The interview's fallout, trending hashtags, angry voicemails from Victoria, meant nothing. All he saw was Lila's face, her smile, the twins he hadn't yet met. The flight was agonizing, each minute stretching as he called the hospital for updates. "She's stable," a nurse assured him, "but her blood pressure's high. The twins are showing distress." In Oregon, Lila lay in a hospital bed, monitors beeping, her hands clasped over her belly. Janelle sat beside her, squeezing her hand. "He's coming, Lila. You're not alone." Lila nodded, her voice weak. "I saw the interview. He was incredible." But fear lingered, for the twins, herself, and the life they'd dared to dream. Ethan's plane touched down, and he ran through the hospital corridors, guided by a nurse to Lila's room. She looked small against the white sheets, her eyes fluttering open as he whispered her name. "Ethan," she breathed, relief softening her face. "You're here." "Always," he said, taking her hand, his voice breaking. The interview, the Caldwells, the world. It all faded. Their love, their twins, were all that mattered now. The small coastal hospital in Oregon hummed with urgency, its fluorescent lights casting stark shadows on the maternity ward's walls. Ethan Caldwell sat beside Lila Harper's bed, his hand gripping hers, her skin clammy against his. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking her spiking blood pressure and the twins' fragile heartbeats. Lila, pale and tethered to IV lines, managed a weak smile. "You made it," she whispered, her voice hoarse from exhaustion. Ethan's televised interview, exposing his family's corruption, felt like a lifetime ago, eclipsed by the current crisis. "Of course I'm here," Ethan said, kissing her forehead, his voice thick with fear. He'd raced from the GMA studio in Los Angeles, the plane ride a blur of dread after learning Lila had collapsed from preeclampsia. Her eyes, usually bright with defiance, were heavy with pain and worry. "You're going to be okay. All three of you." A doctor in scrubs entered, her face calm but serious, chart in hand. "Ms. Harper, your condition is worsening. Your blood pressure's too high, and we're seeing organ stress. The twins are at 32 weeks, premature but viable. We're recommending an emergency C-section to protect you and the babies." Lila's hand tightened on Ethan's, her breath hitching. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice small. "What if they're not ready? What if I—" "You're the strongest person I know," Ethan interrupted, his eyes locked on hers. "You've got this, Lila. We've got this." He squeezed her hand, willing his strength into her, though his own heart pounded with terror. The doctor nodded. "We'll try medication to stabilize you first, but if that fails, we need to move quickly." She left to prepare, and Lila turned to Ethan, her eyes searching. "There's something you need to know," she said, her voice barely audible. "Your mother came to Oregon yesterday. She offered me $3 million to leave you and raise the twins alone, never naming you as their father." Her words trembled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I told her no, Ethan, but I was afraid staying with you would cost you everything." Ethan's face darkened, anger flaring at Margaret's audacity. "She had no right," he growled, his hand tightening around hers. "You are my everything, Lila. You and our babies. The rest, money, the Caldwell name, is nothing without you." Lila's eyes softened, a faint smile breaking through. "I saw your interview. You were fearless. I'm so proud of you." "I meant every word," Ethan said, brushing a curl from her face. "And when this is over, we'll build our life, Our way. His voice cracked, but he held her gaze, anchoring them both. The following hours were a blur of tests and tension. The medication failed to lower Lila's blood pressure, and by evening, the doctor returned, her tone urgent. "We need to deliver now. The twins are in distress, and so are you." Lila nodded, gripping Ethan's hand as nurses prepped her for surgery. Ethan donned scrubs, his heart racing as he followed her to the operating room. Inside, the sterile brightness contrasted with the chaos of emotion. Ethan stood by Lila's side, whispering encouragement as the anesthesiologist worked. "You're doing great," he said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "I'm right here." Lila's eyes, wide with fear and love, held his until the anesthesia took effect. The surgery was swift. First came a daughter, her tiny cry piercing the room, a sound that swelled Ethan's heart with a love so fierce it nearly broke him. "Amara," he whispered, the name they'd chosen weeks ago. 2 minutes later, a son joined her, smaller but fierce, his wail strong. "Miles," Ethan said, tears streaming down his face as nurses whisked the twins to the NICU for monitoring. He turned to share the moment with Lila, but the room erupted in chaos. Monitors screeched, and the surgeon barked orders. "She's hemorrhaging," a nurse said, her voice calm but firm, guiding Ethan away from the table. "Let the doctors work." Ethan stumbled into the hallway, the swinging doors shutting him out. He slumped against the wall, his breath ragged, praying as never before. Please, let her be okay. The twins were alive, but Lila was everything. He couldn't lose her. Time stretched, each minute an eternity. Ethan alternated between pacing outside the operating room and sitting in the NICU, marveling at Amara and Miles, their tiny fingers curled in incubators. They were fighters, like their mother, but the thought of her fighting for her life down the hall tore at him. Finally, the surgeon emerged, her face tired but relieved. "She's stable," she said. "We had to perform a hysterectomy to stop the bleeding, but she's going to be okay." Relief flooded Ethan, his knees buckling. "Can I see her?" "Soon," the surgeon said. "She's in recovery, groggy from anesthesia." Ethan nodded, tears of gratitude blurring his vision. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice breaking. In the recovery room, Lila stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "The babies?" she asked, her voice weak, barely audible. "They're perfect," Ethan said, taking her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Amara and Miles, strong like you. They're in the NICU, getting tougher every minute." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "I was so afraid I wouldn't see them." "You're here," Ethan said, kissing her hand. "You're their hero." He hesitated, then added gently, "The doctors had to do a hysterectomy, Lila. I'm so sorry." She was quiet, absorbing the loss. "We have Amara and Miles," she said finally, her voice steadying. "That's what matters." Ethan nodded, his heart aching for her strength, her sacrifice. As Lila drifted back to sleep, Ethan sat vigil, the hospital's hum a distant backdrop. The world outside, his family's threats, the media's frenzy, faded. His interview had lit a firestorm, but here, with Lila and their twins, he'd found his truth. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, bound by a love forged in crisis. The Oregon Coastal Hospital was quiet, the morning light filtering through the blinds of Lila Harper's recovery room. She sat propped against pillows, her face pale but resolute, a faint smile breaking through as Ethan Caldwell entered, cradling a cup of her favorite chamomile tea. 2 weeks had passed since the emergency C-section that brought their twins, Amara and Miles, into the world. and nearly took Lila from him. The hysterectomy had saved her life, but the weight of it lingered, a silent loss they were still navigating. Ethan set the tea on her bedside table, his hand brushing hers, a touch that anchored them both. "You're spoiling me," Lila said, her voice stronger than yesterday. Her eyes flicked to the NICU down the hall, where Amara and Miles grew steadier each day, their tiny lungs gaining strength. "How are they?" "Fighters," Ethan said, sitting beside her. "Amara's got your stubborn streak. Kept kicking the monitor off. Miles is quieter, but those eyes, all you." His smile was warm, but shadows lingered beneath it. The world outside hadn't stopped spinning, and the fallout from his GMA interview, where he'd exposed the Caldwell family's corrupt legacy, was seismic. Lila reached for his hand, sensing his tension. "What's happening out there? You've been dodging my questions." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It's a mess. The Caldwell Foundation's reeling donors pulled out, stock down 5 points. A whistleblower, a former employee, claiming my grandfather paid off families he displaced in the 60s, came forward. It's confirming everything I said." He paused, his jaw tightening. "Victoria's pushing harder to freeze my trust fund. My lawyer says we can fight it, but it'll be ugly." Lila's heart sank. "Because of me? The twins?" "No," Ethan said fiercely, squeezing her hand. "Because they're scared of the truth. They've controlled me my whole life. But I'm done." His phone buzzed. Another call from Sarah, his publicist. He silenced it, but Lila caught the flicker of worry in his eyes. "Tell me the rest," she pressed, her voice gentle but firm. He hesitated, then nodded. "The family-friendly film dropped me, but I signed on for an indie project. A drama about redemption. It's small but real. And my savings and film earnings are enough. We're not broke, Lila, not even close." She nodded, relief mixing with resolve. "Good, because I'm not taking your money for my restaurant." Her tone was unwavering, and Ethan raised an eyebrow, half amused. "Still stubborn," he said, leaning in to kiss her forehead. "But I wouldn't change it." Lila's recovery was slow but steady, her days filled with hospital visits to the twins and quiet moments with Ethan. Janelle, the local restaurateur who'd become her mentor, visited often, bringing homemade cornbread and advice. Janelle said, "You've got a vision," one afternoon, spreading papers across Lila's bed. "But you need a loan to make it real. A small business program in Portland offers low interest, flexible terms. I know a guy at the bank." Lila hesitated, her hand on her stomach, still tender from surgery. "I've never taken on debt like that. It's risky." "Dreams are risky," Janelle said, her eyes kind but firm. "You've got the talent. Trust it." Inspired, Lila spent evenings sketching her restaurant's menu, Creole staples like shrimp etouffee, paired with Pacific Northwest twists like cedar-planked salmon. She applied for the loan, refusing Ethan's offer to fund it. "This is mine," she told him, her voice fierce. "I need to do it my way." The outside world was less kind. Ethan's interview had split public opinion. Fans flooded social media with support, and hashtag Team Ethan Lila trended alongside messages from advocacy groups praising his courage. One tweet read, "Thank you for exposing the truth," from a community organizer whose family had suffered under Caldwell developments. But the backlash was brutal. Trolls spewed venom, calling Lila a homewrecker who'd trapped Ethan. One article dug into her past, twisting her scholarship-funded culinary school journey into a calculated climb. Lila read it once, then shut her laptop, her hands shaking. "They don't know you," Ethan said, catching her expression. "They can't tell us." "I know," she said, but the words still stung. She thought of Maya's warning, of the headlines that reduced her to a stereotype. Yet the support letters from fans, a nod from a local chef's collective, kept her grounded. A week later, Lila was discharged, and she and Ethan visited the NICU daily, marveling at Amara's tiny fists and Miles's curious gaze. Ethan's lawyer called with grim news. Victoria had swayed the board, citing Ethan's reckless behavior to limit his trust access. But his film residuals and a new contract with the indie project ensured stability. "We'll be fine," he told Lila, his voice steady. "I'm free of their strings." Lila met with the bank to present her business plan for Amara and Miles. The loan officer, skeptical at first, softened as she described her vision, a space where food told stories of heritage and hope. "You've got grit," he said, approving the loan. Lila left elated, texting Janelle, "It's happening." At the beach house, Ethan held her as they watched the sunset, the twins' monitors beeping softly in the background. He said, "We're building something tangible," his voice full of wonder. "You, me, them." Lila nodded, her fears easing. The world's judgment lingered, but their love, forged in crisis, was a foundation strong enough to rebuild on. The Oregon beach house glowed with morning light, the ocean's rhythm a soothing backdrop as Lila Harper cradled her daughter, Amara, in the nursery. 3 weeks after their premature birth, the twins, Amara and Miles, were strong enough to leave the hospital, their tiny bodies thriving despite their early arrival. Ethan Caldwell stood beside her, rocking Miles gently, his eyes soft with awe. The room, painted in soft blues and decorated with handmade quilts from Janelle, felt like a sanctuary, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd left behind in Los Angeles. Lila's recovery from the hysterectomy was steady, though the emotional weight lingered, softened by the twins' presence. "They're perfect," Ethan whispered, brushing a finger over Miles's tiny hand. Lila nodded, her heart full but heavy. The media storm, ignited by Ethan's GMA interview exposing the Caldwell family's corrupt past, still raged. The Caldwell Foundation had issued a statement distancing itself from his claims, and several board members had resigned in protest. Yet support poured in. Fans, advocacy groups, even a distant cousin silenced by the family decades ago, validating Ethan's truth. Lila set Amara in her crib, her thoughts drifting to her restaurant, Amara and Miles, nearing completion in Portland. Despite a skeptical investor's doubts, the small business loan she'd secured had fueled her dream. She'd spent weeks refining her menu, Creole classics like crawfish étouffée, paired with Pacific Northwest touches like huckleberry cornbread, guided by Janelle's mentorship. A recent meeting with the supplier had tested her resolve. He'd questioned her ability to pull off a high-end concept, his tone dripping with condescension. Lila had countered with a detailed pitch, her passion silencing his doubts. The contract was hers, a victory she'd earned alone. Ethan's phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. "It's Sarah," he said, stepping into the living room to take the call. Lila followed, overhearing snippets. His indie film was generating buzz, but 2 endorsement deals were on hold, fallout from the scandal. He hung up, his expression resolute. He told her that the production company is moving forward, of festivals interested in my screenplay. "We're okay, Lila. My savings are solid." She nodded, pride swelling. Ethan had left the Caldwell Trust, but his film earnings and new projects ensured their stability. "I knew you'd land on your feet," she said, squeezing his hand. "But I'm still doing the restaurant my way. No handouts." He grinned, pulling her close. "Wouldn't dream of arguing with you." That afternoon, Janelle visited, bringing a basket of scones and architectural plans for the restaurant. She said the contractor's on schedule, spreading the plans on the kitchen table. Wood floors are in, and the open kitchen's taking shape. You'll be cooking for Portland in a month. Lila traced the drawings, her vision coming to life. A warm space blending her grandmother's Creole soul with coastal charm. A knot of excitement and fear tightened in her chest. "What if it fails?" she asked, her voice low. "What if I can't?" "You will," Janelle interrupted, her tone firm. "You've got the grit, Lila, and a story people will taste in every bite." Her words echoed Lila's grandmother, bolstering her resolve. Later, Ethan received a call that stilled the room. "It's my mother," he said, surprise lacing his voice. Margaret Caldwell, who'd offered Lila millions to disappear, wanted to visit Portland to meet the twins. Lila's stomach twisted, memories of Margaret's cold warning in the Malibu kitchen resurfacing. Ethan hesitated, then answered. "She says she's been thinking," he relayed after hanging up. "Wants to try your cooking, too." Lila raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "Is she coming to make peace or keep up appearances?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe both. I told her she's welcome only if she respects us. You, me, the twins. No games." Lila nodded slowly. "Everyone deserves a chance to change, but I'm watching her." The following week, Margaret arrived at their modest Portland rental, a far cry from the Caldwell estate. She looked out of place, her tailored coat and pearl earrings clashing with the cozy chaos of baby bottles and burp cloths. She brought gifts, hand-carved wooden rattles for the twins, chosen with care. The air was tense as she sat across from Lila, her posture stiff. Amara, nestled in Lila's arms, reached for Margaret's pearls, her tiny fingers bold. The gesture broke the ice, drawing a hesitant smile from Margaret. Dinner was Lila's creation. Shrimp gumbo with roasted root vegetables, a nod to her roots and their new home. Margaret took a bite, her eyes widening slightly. "This is extraordinary," she said, her tone genuine. She set down her spoon, her gaze shifting to the twins in their bouncers. "I owe you an apology, Lila. What I did, offering you money, undermining you, was wrong, unforgivable." Lila held her breath, Ethan's hand finding hers under the table. "What changed?" he asked, his voice wary. Margaret's eyes dropped to Amara and Miles. "Them, partly. My grandchildren. And time to reflect on who I've become and what I've valued." She looked at Lila, her voice softer. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope to be part of their lives if you allow it." Lila studied her, the weight of Margaret's past actions heavy. "Respect comes first," she said finally. "For us, for them. Earn that, and we'll see." Margaret nodded, a flicker of humility in her eyes. As she left for her hotel, Ethan wrapped his arms around Lila. "You handled that like a queen," he said, kissing her temple. Lila smiled, glancing at the twins. "They're worth it. We're worth it." The wounds were still raw, but a door had cracked open, a tentative step toward healing. The Portland night buzzed with anticipation, the air fragrant with spices, as Lila Harper stood at the center of Amara and Miles. Her restaurant a vision brought to life. The converted warehouse glowed with warm wood tones, African-inspired tapestries, and an open kitchen where her team hustled, plating dishes that blended her grandmother's Creole soul with Pacific Northwest flair. Tonight was the grand opening, and the dining room hummed with guests, locals, food critics, and curious fans drawn by the story of Lila and Ethan Caldwell's scandal-turned love. Lila adjusted her chef's jacket, her heart racing with pride and nerves. She'd built this on her terms, her small business loan and relentless grit, turning a dream into reality. Ethan navigated the crowd, pushing a double stroller where 9-month-old Amara and Miles gurgled, their eyes, Amara's bright, Miles's soulful, darting at the lights. "Look at Mommy's empire," he said, kissing their heads. He caught Lila's eye across the room, his smile a beacon of unwavering support. The past year had tested them. Media vitriol, the Caldwell family's betrayal, Lila's near-death delivery. But they'd emerged stronger, their love a fortress against the world's noise. The restaurant's opening had drawn raves even before the first bite. A local critic, sampling Lila's huckleberry-infused gumbo, called it a revelation in a pre-opening review, sparking a flood of reservations. Lila had faced doubters, a supplier who'd scoffed at her ambitious menu, a critic who'd hinted her fame was tied to Ethan, but she'd silenced them with her food. Tonight, as guests savored her cedar-planked shrimp etouffee, she felt her grandmother's spirit in every dish, a legacy of love served on every plate. Ethan's path had flourished. His production company, launched with a screenplay about hidden family truths, had wrapped its first project, a documentary that won early praise at a Sundance screener. His supporting role in an indie drama earned buzz for its raw depth, critics noting a new authenticity in his work. The Caldwell Trust remained out of reach, Victoria's legal maneuvers ongoing, but Ethan's film residuals and new contracts kept them secure. He'd traded Hollywood's gloss for stories that mattered, and it suited him. Margaret Caldwell's arrival at the opening was a surprise. She was tentative, but deliberate. Since her apology in Portland, she'd visited twice, drawn to Amara and Miles, her grandchildren softening her edges. Tonight, she approached Lila, a rare warmth in her eyes. "This is extraordinary," she said, gesturing to the bustling dining room. "You've built something remarkable, Lila." She hesitated, then added, "I'd like to be here, for them, for you, if you'll have me." Lila nodded, her guard still up but softening. "It's a start," she said, her voice steady. "For the twins' sake, we'll see." Margaret's smile was slight but genuine, a fragile bridge toward healing. Victoria remained distant, her silence a wound Ethan accepted but refused to dwell on. As the night peaked, Ethan took Lila's hand, leading her to the restaurant's patio, where fairy lights twinkled against the Portland skyline. Guests mingled inside, but it was just them out here, the city's hum a soft backdrop. "You did it," Ethan said, his voice thick with pride. "This place, it's your heart, soul, everything." Lila laughed, tears shimmering. "We did it. I couldn't have gotten here without you." She glanced at the stroller, Amara and Miles dozing, their tiny hands curled. "All of us." Ethan's eyes softened, a mischievous glint surfacing. "I've got one more thing for tonight." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Lila's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a sapphire ring, its deep blue catching the light, a nod to their unconventional journey. He dropped to one knee, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Lila Harper, you've changed my life, given me a family, a purpose. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, joy overwhelming her. "Yes," she whispered, laughing through the tears. 1,000 times. Yes." She pulled him up, kissing him deeply, the crowd's applause from inside a distant cheer. "But I'm keeping Harper for the restaurant," she teased, her smile radiant. Ethan laughed, sliding the ring onto her finger. Wouldn't have it any other way. Their kiss was a promise, forged through storms, media frenzy, family betrayal, Lila's brush with death, and sealed by a love that refused to break. Later, they stood on the patio, arms around each other, the twins asleep nearby. Portland's stars glittered above, the city a canvas of possibility. "What do you see out there?" Ethan asked, echoing a question from their early days. Lila looked at the horizon, then back at him. "Us," she said softly. "Our family. Our dreams. A life we built, not borrowed. The scandals, the headlines, the Caldwell's legacy. They'd faded against the truth of their bond. Amara and Miles, unaware of the journey that brought them here, slept peacefully and were loved beyond measure. Ultimately, that mattered. A love forever bound, a legacy of their own.